Good evening, and we're live. My name is Annette, and I'm your host here at Coaching You for You. Tonight, I have a very special guest, Dr. Tabitha Bellamy, whom I will sometimes refer to mistakenly in an error as Bailey, but she's Bellamy, and I want you to remember that. And tonight, we have a three-part series beginning. Tonight is the first part. And before we get started, I'd like to shout out all the small business owners who are getting it done. Thank you. We need you in the community and we absolutely support you. And I want to remind everybody to hydrate, as I do every night. It's important. I always tell you drink water, eat fruit, moisturize your face, feet, and hands, and mind your business. That's important. And so tonight I introduce to some and bring back for others Dr. Tabitha Bailey. She's got a story to tell, and her story is her truth. So draw near. Tabitha, please.
Thank you, Tabitha Bellamy. Even though my wonderful sorority sister sometimes forgets, I think she just gets excited and Bailey just sounds cute. So I am Tabitha Bellamy. I was born in San Francisco, California, and raised in Vallejo. I currently live in Lawrence, New Jersey, which is essentially Princeton, but without the high property taxes. I live here with my two kids. Well, I would actually say 1.25 kids because one's away at college most of the time. So I have one kid full time at home and my 4-pound dog. I'm a proud member of Alpha Kappa Alpha Sorority Incorporated and
Yes.
belong to the Omega Zeta Omega chapter and a member of Jack and Jill of America Incorporated. And I am serving on the executive board of the magnificent Mercer County chapter. So shout out to my chapter. I'm very, very tired this time of year because we do a lot for our teens.
Okay.
But we work hard because it matters.
Tabitha, let me interrupt you for a minute to tell you that your best friend, Catherine Cunningham Brantley, is here. And she wants you to know that.
Okay.
Okay, come on. Let's
I'm
go.
not surprised. That's how we do. Let's see. Oh, okay. Speaking of Catherine Cunningham Brantley, I earned my Bachelor of Science degree with a concentration in biology from Howard University. And that's where I met Kathy on my very first day of school.
Okay.
There. I earned a Master of Education in Science from the George Washington University and my Master of Arts and PhD in Educational Psychology with a concentration in psychometrics from the University of Georgia.
So she's pretty smart, guys. She's incredibly smart.
I mean, I could go on and on about my accomplishments in the field of psychometrics and educational research, but just Google me for that kind of thing because I know the reason that people actually came on is because they want to hear my story. They want to understand how I got to the place where I am, why I so crazy and harassing people on Facebook and on my social media every day. And when I say I'm living my best life, it's not just a catchphrase from the song. It's not, fake happiness. It's truly happiness. And a lot of it has to do with being fully aware of mental illnesses and the presentation of symptoms and how that can impact others around you and the resources that are available. So, I'll start from the beginning. I was born in San Francisco, California, to the most amazing and loving mother ever in the entire world. Like everybody thinks their mom is the best, but my mom was truly the best mom ever.
Okay.
But my father was a Vietnam veteran who was diagnosed with PTSD, extreme and severe PTSD, and bipolar schizophrenia. But he refused to get treatment because I now know, that I didn't know that as a baby, but he felt that treatment, therapy, medication was for white people. It wasn't for black people.
Wow.
He didn't need that. And he was a minister and he was planning to become a pastor and he felt that he could pray it away, right? So he was totally untreated for his really professionally diagnosed mental illnesses, which is important for me to state up front because that impacts the way that I was raised, because I was raised by a parent who was very healthy and trying very hard, and another one who was very, very severely mentally ill. So my household was incredibly volatile, unstable is definitely a way I would describe it. I remember being a toddler and playing games, and some days my father was really engaged and very happy and would play with my brother. He's 2 years younger than I, he's now deceased, but we played a lot together. And some days my father would join in the games with us and he would play with us and he would tickle us and we would laugh and have a great time. And the very next day, we could be playing the same game with all the same number of toys on the floor, the same noise level, all things being equal. All of a sudden, it was too much noise. There were too many toys. We had made a mess. We were doing all these things, and he would spank us. And we just didn't understand what we did wrong. But I mean, now as an adult, I understand that that's because of being bipolar and he's, sometimes he's manic and he's happy and he's wanting to do all these things. And then the other times he's depressed and he's negative and very angry and he would take it out on us. So that just continued for, the first few years of my life when as a toddler, now, having done all these studies, I know that that was the very formative time where I should have been attaching to my parents, both parents, right? Equally, because we had a two-parent home. So I was very attached to my mother, but not my father because he had shown himself to be very volatile and unstable. And I didn't know which days were good days, which days were bad days. So I just decided that, dad's a bad guy. I'm just going to kind of try to stay away from him. Um,
Hmm.
and I remember a very, very, I would say a poignant memory that I think will stay with me until I die. I was playing with my brother Nelson, as I said, the one who's 2 years my junior, now deceased. We were just playing, having a good time. My father asked if we wanted a peanut butter and jelly sandwich, right? And I've always felt like I was just supposed to be a princess. So peanut butter and jelly was beneath me. I never have enjoyed a peanut butter and jelly sandwich. So when he said, "Do you guys want a peanut butter and jelly sandwich?" I was like, no, no. Like I'd rather starve than eat peanut butter and jelly because I'm just like, I'm too good for this, right? Um, my brother said no too because I was his big sister. So whatever I was doing, he was going to do. Then about an hour later, my father was doing something else, probably in his study as a pastor. I forgot to include that he was a pastor at that time. Um, my brother went to my mom and said, "Can I have a peanut butter and jelly sandwich?" He's
Oh,
3 years old, right? So
right,
he says, "Mom, can I have a peanut butter and jelly?" My mom makes a peanut butter and jelly sandwich because my brother is 3 years old. She's not going to let her baby starve.
right.
My brother's eating the sandwich. I'm playing with my Play-Doh. I remember everything like it was yesterday. My father flies into that dining room in a fit of rage, physically attacks my mother, is beating her because he said, "You gave him a sandwich and you're disrespecting me in front of my children, and this can't happen." So he's physically beating my mother in front of me. I'm 5 years old. And then he starts to strangle her. And my mother is very, very fair skinned. So she's turning bright red. She's crying. She's screaming. She's begging him to stop. He's not stopping. He's just strangling. And I just like, my mom's going to die. Like, literally, I'm sitting here at 5 years old watching my father essentially kill my mother. And so I jumped on him. I started beating him with my fist. I'm kicking him. I'm biting him. I'm scratching him. I'm like, "You're killing mommy. You're killing mommy." And then eventually, I don't know what happened. She stopped crying. I think she stopped breathing really for a minute. And he stopped attacking her. But at that point, at 5 years old, I decided that I was the protector for my family. I was my mother's protector. I was my brother's protector, my baby brother who had just been born. Like I decided that if I wasn't there, he probably would have killed my mother. So I need to do everything I can to stay. I didn't know the word present, but I just knew that I needed to be there all the time watching everybody, making sure that everything is going just so that he doesn't fly into these fits of rage and hurt anybody else, in the household. Um, So that went on for a number of years. I would, come home from school, look around. If there were any toys on the floor, I'd pick them up and put them in my siblings' rooms. There were any dishes in the sink, I'd clean them, just doing everything I can to be the protector for my family and keeping my siblings safe. And I will never forget this night. It was September 15th, 1989. I was 12 years old. I was in my bed. Everybody was asleep. And my father came into my room. And I'm not going to go into graphic detail because it's really not necessary for the story. But he did things to me that no adult should ever do to a child, especially if the child is your own. And I remember being in my bed. I was like, just close your eyes. If you close your eyes, it's not real. It's a bad dream. Like, this is not really, there's no way this guy who's a pastor, right? Who's your father is doing these things to you. That's just not real. Just close your eyes. It's a nightmare. When you wake up tomorrow, it's not going to be real. And that's what I just told myself.
So let me ask you a question here. Is that the first time at age 12 that you were molested,
Yes,
that the incest occurred?
that I can remember. Okay.
Okay.
So as I don't remember anything before, and through going through extensive cognitive behavioral therapy, we try to uncover everything, all the way back from a toddler. But as far as I remember, being very cognizant, lucid, knowing exactly what was taking place and how I was being violated, it was age 12. That was the first time.
Age 5 or 12?
12 was the
12.
first time. Yes.
Okay.
So I remember going to school the next day and saying, last night was really weird, right? I'm sure it was a dream. I just kept telling myself that was a really weird dream because that just can't be real. That didn't really happen to you. So I went through school. I was a very high achieving student at a school where I was one of the only Black students. So school, just being a high achieving student kept me from being bullied and all these other things for being, one of the only Black kids. So I was kind of in a fog that day. I was like, this isn't real. Like, this just didn't happen to me. And I went home. My mother was cooking dinner. My brothers were doing their homework. My sister was coloring. I don't know. Everybody was doing something. I was in my room really trying to just say, whatever happened yesterday was fake, right? Like, that didn't happen to you, and put it out of your mind. It'll never happen again. My father came into my room. He closed and locked my door and said, I'm a pastor. You are a 12-year-old girl. If you tell anybody what happened to you, they're not going to believe you because I'm a pastor, and I'm going to say that you're a girl who's boy crazy and you're letting the devil use you to destroy my ministry. And I just sat there like, wow, this okay, so it did happen. It wasn't a dream. And then he proceeds to say, and if they do believe you, they are probably, people are going to take your brothers and sisters and put them in foster care where they can be raped, or they won't have enough food, or they can be beaten. And what do you think that would do for your mother to have your siblings go to foster care just because you did something so selfish? And so that was the very first time in my life where I decided that I should probably die because this really bad thing happened to me. I can't tell anybody. I don't want my siblings to suffer. But if I don't say anything, I'm going to suffer. And I just like, how can I get out of it? Oh, I know I can die, right? So thank God there was no internet or any of those kind of things in the 80s, because I honestly can say I would have been successful, because at that moment I just wanted more than anything not to be alive anymore. So I'd go to school, being one of the only Black girls and everything. Didn't have a lot of money, didn't have the blonde hair, blue eye, California body. School wasn't a great place. So I just really became obsessed with suicide. So when people say suicidal ideations, that was my life for at least an entire year. Like, every single day I was just consumed with how can I kill myself? How can I kill, like, how? And meanwhile, my father's still coming into my room, right? And I'm not telling anybody, and I'm just going through all these things. And every single day, I'm just going to school. I'm like, people are making fun of my shoes. People are making fun of my hair, my big nose, my big breasts, my big lips, because that wasn't in style back in the 80s. And I would go home, and those things were attractive to my own father. I had such high levels of cognitive dissonance that I just literally did not want to exist anymore. Um,
And this was at age 12.
this was 12 until about 13. And then at 13, my mother decided to transfer me to a different school in the city where I ultimately finished my education and graduated high school, Vallejo, California. Until when I arrived at Vallejo, California, it was so diverse. There was just a diversity of ethnicity and social economic status and thought. And for the first time, I really felt accepted. I had this tribe of incredible friends who just kind of like just came out of nowhere. And we're like, oh, you transferred to our school. You're so pretty. You're so smart. The Black people weren't telling me I talk like a white girl. The white people weren't telling me I wasn't good enough. I was accepted. And I was
You
saying,
found your balance.
yeah, I had this incredible tribe. There still talk to these people to this day because I've had to tell them, you guys saved my life. So one of my best friends, Verton Banks, Valerie Gomes, I will name them, Chantel Green, Jennifer King, Lucy Trujillo, let's see, Erica Riley, Marcia Johnson, Yaniva Sisse. They were just my tribe every day. They would come to school and be like, Tabitha, you're here. Just no matter
How
how
cool
bad
was that?
night was, I would come to school and feel loved. And then I had a boyfriend, right? For the first time, with my hair being as it was, my big nose, my big lips, my brown skin, a little Black boy liked me and thought I was beautiful. And his name was Cornelius Taylor. I will never forget that boy because he used to put these love notes in my locker every single day. And they were pretty extreme to be, 13 years old. Like, I've been up all night thinking about how beautiful you are. And one day we're going to get married. But you know what? When a person wants to die, just saying, you know what? I'm going to wait till tomorrow because I want to see what Cornelius says. I want to see if he still thinks I'm
Mhm.
beautiful. My friends are going to run down the hall and hug me, and we're going to share cookies, and we're going to, have pizza together. They really and truly kept me alive. And so one of the life lessons I've shared with my own children is, as they were going through intermediate school and middle school, and, I still have one in high school, just be nice to kids at your school. It doesn't matter. Like the kid who has no friends, the kid who's sitting by themselves, the kid who's funny, but also a little bit weird because you don't know what people are going through at
That's
home.
right.
Especially right now, like the incidences of teen suicide are astronomical. One of my daughter's own friends took his life earlier this year um, because of home life, right? That there sometimes people want to blame everything on school bullying, but a lot of times home life plays a big part into what teens feel and just the feeling of hopelessness and helplessness and like I just don't want to be alive anymore. And I can totally relate to that. And that's why I say the people who I've named are still my friends to this day because I have coined them as my lifesavers in a time where I just really was going through so much and didn't want to be alive. Um,
So let me jump in here for a second because I want to be sure our audience understands and that we get it across how important it is to pay attention to that kid who seems to be just a bit off, who may not be on point, might be very smart, but very quiet, withdrawn, and not really participating at the level that they should. Not just because you were in a predominantly or all white school, but because you were a kid who was suffering, and somebody should have saw that.
yeah.
And so I want to say to the audience, pay attention, heads up, look out for that kid. Go ahead.
And look out for the kid and don't be so consumed by who they are and whose they are, right? Because I think a lot of the adults in elementary school and early middle school missed some signs because they were like, well, her father is a pastor,
Mm.
they're a Christian home. They're a good Christian home. Her mother is the director of speech therapy. On paper, I think we looked crystal clear and perfect, but they didn't pay attention to sometimes when we wouldn't come to school because there was such severe abuse that we had visible bruises and we couldn't go out of the house, right? People just kind of miss those signs. And I'm not, doing this to indict anyone. I'm just saying that now, as we're going into 2023, that we all have a kind of a collective responsibility to pay attention to those kids who
Pay
you might
attention.
think are okay, but they're not really okay. And so just going to the paying attention and thinking about, um, as I was entering ninth grade, my father's auditory hallucinations with his schizophrenia were really, really out of control.
So we're dealing with bipolar and schizophrenia.
Bipolar and schizophrenia. So one day
Okay.
he's really up, he's happy, he's fun. The next day he's like just in a panic and he's in a rage and he's abusing everybody. But he also had schizophrenia. So he was, kind of paranoid. I really remember ninth grade because that's when his auditory hallucinations just got out of control. So if my brothers and I were having a conversation, we could be talking about anything, right? Family Matters, Steve Urkel. My brother Nelson wanted to be Steve Urkel for Halloween. We're talking about that. My father would be 100% convinced that we were plotting against him to hurt him and or kill him, and would beat us mercilessly until we confessed to this plot that we were not really doing. It was just outrageous. So I tried to avoid him, as much as possible. I'm counting down to like, okay, I'm going to be 18. I can go to college. I can get away from here. Um, and I would, try to, if anybody was going to be gone from home, I'd leave because I'm like, either he's going to beat me or he's going to molest me. These are my only two options when I'm alone with my father. So one time I was home by myself. I heard the garage door open. My heart dropped because I'm like, I'm trapped here right by myself. So I was like, I'm going to go bake cookies. Everybody likes cookies, right? The smell is really good in the house. Somehow my father decided that I was in the kitchen talking about him to whom I don't know because there was no phone in the kitchen. We didn't have cell phone, none of those things. There was nobody in the house.
Right.
So he came in and beat me with closed fist, like he was fighting a grown man, right? Like I hit my head against the kitchen counter. I fell to the floor. I vomited. I was seeing double. As an adult, we now know that these things are concussions. Because he said I was talking about him and I was trying to do something to him, and I had no idea what he was even talking about. Fix myself up because I did not want to present as, having just been beaten that badly, because my mother would have freaked out and probably called the police. And then here's my fear that my siblings are going to be taken away again and go into foster care. So let me just fix myself up, ice packs, go in my room, pretend like I'm studying or whatever so that my mom wouldn't ask me any questions and bother me. Next day I went to school, still seeing double, still very, very dizzy, super nauseous. And I was sitting in a class, and I will never forget, my friend Jennifer King, who was still my friend to this day, went to the English teacher and said, something's wrong with Tabitha. She's not okay. She's not right.
Mhm.
And he asked me these questions. I couldn't answer anything because I had ringing in my ears. I was seeing double. I was dizzy. And he had the front office call 911, and they took me via ambulance to the hospital. And they were like, it seems like she has signs of a traumatic brain injury. And they just kept asking me, what happened to you? Like, did you fall? Did somebody hit you? They just went through this whole battery of questions. And I was like, no, nothing happened. I'm having a bad day. Maybe it's my period. No, I was just making any type of excuse. I really did not want to indict my father because I did not want my siblings or my mother to have any pain, because at age 5, I had decided that I was their protector. So, they put me through, I don't know, this like battery of treatment to get better, get my brain back on track, which worked great. Went through finishing, ninth grade. In our town, ninth grade was still junior high, and then we went to high school.
Right.
High school was phenomenal. It was amazing. Like, I feel sorry for kids who were bullied and things like that in high school. I did not have those experiences. My home life was still in shambles, but I got new friends. Danielle Coney, she's still my friend till this day. Diaka Carter and Tequila Flowers. They added to my tribe that I already had of just these people who were surrounding me with so much love every single day. Um, to the point where he started saying things like, "It's okay." They all people said was, "Your father's weird. He's really, really weird." Like, yeah, he's more than weird, but everybody knew that he was off. Um, so they started saying things like, "Hey, let's do a countdown till college when you move out. Hey, let's do a countdown, to you're 18. Let's do a countdown for this." I was like, I need to earn a certain amount of money so I can get a car. They would find me jobs so that I could work the jobs to earn the money to get a car because that would give me more freedom and more opportunities to get away from the father who they just knew was weird. They didn't know he was mentally ill and the level of abuse that I was experiencing in my home. So that was going extraordinarily well. And then I get to my senior year in high school and I'm like, that slave who's finally like, "Oh, we heard Lincoln freed us. We can go." Right. And I'm like, okay, great. I'm going as far away from this house as humanly possible. And my uncle had just accepted a position as dean of the chapel at Howard University. He's still there, Dr. Bernard Richardson. And I was like, this is perfect. He's there, so I can leverage him being there and being faculty and my aunt being a professor at the School of Nursing to get out of this house and go away to college. So I floated the idea to my parents. My mom is like, that sounds amazing. My father said, no, you're not going away. You're going to school in California. And the schools he named were within 1 hour of our home. So to me, that felt like I'd still be trapped because he could still jump in a car and come up and try to like harass me, stalk me, whatever kind of hold he had on me. I knew it wasn't going to be over if I stayed in California.
Mhm.
So he said, "You're not going to Howard." I'm like, "Yes, I am going to Howard." I still forget. Will never forget. I went over to my friend Chantel Green's house. I was crying my face off. I'm like, "I want to go to Howard." She's like, "Let's talk to our counselor." So I talked to our guidance counselor who said, "Yeah, you're 18. You're a full adult. If you want to go to the school, you go to the school, And she's like, "I'll help you do your application packet to go to Howard." Got that. Got accepted early. Came back home, was like, "All right, I'm going to Howard." And my father said, "Who's paying for it? We're not paying for that. You're going to school in California." So I'm like, okay, this is very good. I mean, very not good, sorry. So I found every single scholarship I could find. My mother would help me behind the scenes because the peace. I mean, he was also abusing her. So she wanted to keep the peace. She wanted to keep the other three kids safe. So she would help me behind the scenes. My band director helped me get a scholarship to Howard. So many, many thanks to John Newson, who gave me a band scholarship to attend Howard University. The AKAs, the Deltas, the Optimists, the Masons, everybody threw everything they had behind me to go and be able to stay. Got all the money together, was like, "All right, you don't have to pay for it. I'm going." And my father said, "How are you getting there? We will not buy a plane ticket for you." And I'm like, "Are you kidding me right now?" Like, I've done all the things that I'm supposed to do, and I'm still trapped. So I ended up working 3 jobs the summer of my senior year. My friends, we're California. They're hanging out on the beach. They're, surfing, doing all the fun things. And I was working 3 jobs so that I could earn my plane ticket and the money to ship all of my belongings from the Bay Area to Washington, D.C. So, I mean, thank God I had a great mom who every time I got any money for graduation, she would give me the card, but she kept the check behind my father's back so that when it was time and I was like, I have this, but I'm short. She handed me a whole bunch of money and was like, "Don't tell anybody I gave this to you, but this is actually your money." And so I was able to leave and finally go to Howard University. I felt so free. I remember when I landed there at BWI Airport, I just broke out into tears because I'm like, people are going to college. They're just going to college. They don't take it seriously. I have been fighting for my life to get away and stop feeling trapped. And I'm finally here. And I was like, so ready for the next chapter. So I arrived on that college campus for band camp. Catherine Cunningham Brantley, who logged in, was the very first person I met on that day one. And we don't go a day without talking to each other because she became my lifeline at Howard. Um, so everybody freshman year, they want to go out, they want to party. Everybody was going to two clubs, the Ritz and Quigley's. They were $5 before 11 p.m. for ladies, and they sent a free shuttle to and from the girls' dorms at Howard.
I'm sure.
So everybody was running to those clubs every weekend. And Kathy would always be like, hey, Tabby, you going to we're going here, we're going to the Ritz, we're going to Quigley's. And I was like, no, I'm going to go to sleep. And then she was like, one day she said, how come every time we go to the club, you go to sleep and you go to sleep for real? Like most people say they're going to sleep, but they're really hanging out with the boy, they're going. She's like, every time you say you're going to sleep, you're really in your bed asleep. And I said, I'm going to tell you something, but you have to promise me you'll never tell anybody else ever in life. And I said, my father molested me, which is the reason I had to leave California and the reason I'm here. So being here at Howard and being in this dorm is the first time that I've been able to have a whole night's sleep without wondering if he was going to come in my room and do anything to me. So I just want to sleep for a little
Since you were 5 years old.
Yeah.
Since
I
you
mean,
were 5 years
it was
old.
always like he was doing something. And then 12 is when he started molesting me. So at 18, being at Howard, being 3,000 miles away, knowing that he couldn't get to me, all I wanted to do was go to sleep. I don't think I went to the club until after my 19th birthday. I really just spent the majority of my freshman year sleeping at night when everybody else was going out. They knew, they used to call me grandma because they're like, oh, she's going to go to bed before 11 o'clock. Anybody's in crisis, you need anything, call Tab. Tabby's going to come to you, because I was in my room and I was asleep because it was the first time that I could have sleep uninterrupted. So, I mean, I think that is another one of the things I've talked to my kids about. When you get to college, you're meeting kids who are coming from everywhere. They've been blessed to be raised in a household with love and support and excellent mental health resources. And
They were safe. They were
they
safe.
were always safe. This was
They
a
were safe.
still a safe house for their kid, their friends, and other kids in the neighborhood. But I told them that when you're going away to college, for some kids, and I've explained to them my story, for some kids, it's their first time to have a good night's sleep. And not just because of things like molestation, it's things like security, right? And sleep, having your own bed, having a room where nobody is shooting or there aren't drugs being used, just things like that. The room is warm. The room isn't too hot. It's not too cold. The bills are paid. The lights are on in the morning.
Right.
Just things like that. So it was really hard for me to explain those things to Kathy, but I will say, it's not really always about having a big circle of friends. It's having one good, tried and true friend who keeps your secrets for you. And I explained to her the gravity of having 3 younger siblings at home and not wanting them to be subjected to foster care or anything, all the things that I had been carrying with me since I was younger, and how important it was for her to just support me and be here for me and love me. And I mean, from 1995 until today, she has definitely been that person who, has just been there for me and supported me through a very difficult time and a huge adjustment. So anybody who went to Howard with me will say I was really popular for being so silly. And people would always be like, she just seems so happy to be in college. And that was true. I was so happy because unlike a lot of people who just were like, woke up and like, I'm going to Howard University and my parents are going to pay for it and they're going to, drive me there. That wasn't my story. I had to go through such hard things to get there. The obstacles really felt insurmountable sometimes, but I finally arrived. So when I got there, I made the best of every single second of being on that campus. I made friends with every single person. Some people probably are thinking I'm crazy. They may not like me. I don't care because I had overcome so many things to be there that I just was filled with joy every single day that I was on that campus because it meant the beginning of a new life for me, that I had been hoping for, since I was 5 years old.
Incredible. Absolutely incredible. And more than that, the transparency. And as I shared, getting on, this is a three-part story. It's a three-part story. It's her truth. It's her story of survival. And so we're here, and she's dealt with the incest. And so you understand that. That's the beginning. There's three parts. There isn't just incest. There was depression, and then there was a suicide attempt. And in the next two episodes, we're going to get to that. I want to thank Tabitha for being here with us tonight and being so transparent. You don't know until you've been in an extremely difficult position how much courage it takes to share your truth. So many people are ashamed. So many people are hiding. And I get it. It takes what it takes. But she's here tonight and she's talking about her experience, her strength, and her hope. And we're going to move to our next episode, which will be the piece that she discusses with you. And then, you're going to have these suicide attempt, but you're also going to have the comeback because there's plenty of comeback in Tabitha's story.
Absolutely.
The beginning of it was getting to Howard and having the guts to fight for herself to get there. And so, to everybody who is shared in this story and in her hope for better times, I want to personally thank you because it's difficult. It's difficult. There are so many people suffering molestation and incest. And I will tell somebody, reach out, pay attention to your kids. Tabitha speaks of about the love of her mother. That's a lot of what got her through. You do understand that.
Absolutely.
Having that parent on the other side provides some balance. And that's important. So shout out to Tabitha's mother for helping her hold it all together and for helping her get to Howard. Thank you. Nobody understands what it's like to be in an abusive home until you're in one.
Yeah, absolutely.
So you don't know her story unless you've experienced her story. And here in the comments, you have the opportunity to share a little bit. Tabitha, I want to thank you for this evening, and your wrap up is.
Catch us next time. I will talk about Howard and being stalked by my father and the comeback that came from that. And again, just talking about amazing mental health resources and the importance of a supportive group of people. And again, just especially as we're in this season of holidays where
Yes.
for many of us, it's a happy time. I have healed, I'm whole, I'm happy, but I've encountered people who just look very sad in their faces. It costs you $0 to smile. It costs you $0 to just say, your lipstick is beautiful. I like that haircut. Your shirt is nice. Those boots are fabulous.
Small things.
Just anything, just anything. If you can pay for the coffee for the person behind you. I paid for coffee the other day. It was $16 when they told me the total. Because I was like, oh, I'll pay for the person behind me. They were like 16.72. I was like, oh Jesus. And I said, you know what? But God has blessed me to be a blessing. So I covered it. So just be nice to somebody. You don't know what people are going through in their homes. And if you can save one life, I mean, that's really all that we need. Heaven rejoices over one life. So just ask you to, be kind to everybody and meet us back here next week.
Next Wednesday at 8:05 here at Coaching You For You. And look out for that kid. Look out for that kid. Pay attention. Look, see, hear, and listen. 8 types of self-care: physical, emotional, social, spiritual, personal, home environment, financial, work, school, and other responsibilities require self-care. Don't forget that. Tabitha, I want to thank you for being here with us this evening. I'd like to thank our guests who dropped in, and I especially want to thank your mother for loving you.
Absolutely.
And
I'm out here. Love you, mommy.
you guys have a great evening. Tabitha Bellamy, sometimes referred to as Bailey. I don't know where I got that name from,
It
but
sounds
that's a new name. Tabitha Bellamy, Dr. Tabitha Bellamy. And we're going to talk a little bit about that next time, too. I want to thank you all for joining us this evening. Have a good evening. And Tabitha, we'll see you next week. Thank you.
good night, everyone.
Good night.